Noor? Noor? Where are you, Noor? Noor? Where are you?
This was where the painstaking work of the investigations began, a methodical quest to unearth the truth from the rubble of a horrific crime. The forensic teams were meticulous, each piece of evidence a silent scream of the victim's final moments. They collected samples, documented the scene, and began piecing together the events of those horrifying, terrifying 2 days. Leading up to her death, she spoke of the plans of her future, perhaps a return to her artistic pursuits, maybe further education abroad. She reportedly jumped from a first floor window in a desperate bid for freedom, only to be dragged back inside by Zahir and a household staff member. Imagine a perfect manicured garden in the heart of Islamabad, where flowers spill over sun-drenched walls and the air. It is fragrant with the smell of flowers. Picture a life drenched in privilege. A world of diplomatic passports, quiet elegance, and limitless possibilities. And then imagine a death, a killing, all of it coming crashing down. Today's story is just about that. Welcome to Welted Marigold, where we share dark and mysterious stories from South Asia and beyond. I'm your storyteller Ambika, and today's story is about Noor Mukadam. Our story begins in a seemingly idyllic setting, with a young woman whose spirit was as vibrant as the marigolds in her garden. But as they say, even in the most beautiful places, shadow can grow, dark shadows, and a single coiled serpent can even shatter a porcelain doll. Noor Mukadam, a vibrant life extinguished too soon, a porcelain doll, shattered, and the chilling silence that followed a serpent's embrace. Imagine Islamabad, not just the capital, but a city often seen through a veil of serene green hills, manicured lawns, and the quiet hum of an elite existence. Here, amidst the whispering pines and the gentle rustle of the flowers, bloomed Noor Mukadam. She was, by all accounts, a breath of fresh air, a spirit unburdened. Born into a respected, well-educated family, her father, Shaukat Mukadam, a former diplomat whose career had spanned continents. Her mother, a woman of grace and quiet strength. Noor's childhood was steeped in the rich mix of Pakistani culture, yet very open to the world. Their home most likely filled with the aroma of simmering halim on Fridays, and the laughter of close-knit family gatherings was a haven of learning and love. She wasn't just a daughter, she was a younger sister, doted upon, perhaps a little spoiled in the way that only the youngest can be. Her schooling was in the best of institutions, both in Pakistan and abroad, a testament to her family's belief in good education and global exposure. These were not merely schools, they were crucibles where young minds, often from privileged backgrounds, were shaped. For Noor, they were places where her innate curiosity and artistic inclinations were nurtured. Noor was drawn to the arts, a free spirit yearning for expression. She dabbled in painting, her canvases vibrant with colors mirroring her inner world. She pursued an interest in fashion design, an ode to her desire to create beauty. But more than anything, she had a great wanderlust, a yearning to see the world, to absorb its many hues and textures. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a fundamental part of her being. She believed in kindness, in empathy, in the gentle hand extended to those who were less fortunate to her. Friends describe her as vivacious, empathetic, a loyal confidant whose laughter could fill a room and whose quiet wisdom belied her years. She moved through life with an elegance, a delicate strength, much like a porcelain doll, beautiful, seemingly fragile, yet holding an inner resilience and strength. Her childhood was painted with the vibrant hues of a diplomatic life. She experienced the world through her father's postings, living in countries where cultures merged and perspectives widened. This global upbringing didn't make her a stranger to her roots. Rather, it deepened her appreciation for the rich traditions of Pakistan. She was master of two worlds, the serene, refined elegance of her Islamabad home and the bustling, diverse canvas of the globe. This was a young woman on a path of self-discovery, with a passport full of stamps and a heart full of dreams. Her laughter, once described as a melody, echoed in the halls of her family's home, a beacon of her joy and hope. In the months leading up to her death, she spoke of the plans of her future, perhaps a return to her artistic pursuits, maybe further education abroad. She was a marigold, bright and full of life, preparing to bloom, fully into the world she so desperately wanted to explore. But she was welted marigold. Every story of light often has a dark shadow, and in this case, Noor's story, the dark shadow was Zahir Jaffer. Zahir too hailed from an affluent, influential family, the Jaffers. His father, Zahir Jaffer, and mother, Ismat Adamji, were titans of the industry, well connected within Pakistan's very, very elite circles. Their wealth was not just considerable, it was generational, affording Zahir a life of unparalleled luxury, private schools, foreign universities, and a world where every whim could seemingly be indulged. Yet, Zahir's educational journey was one that was fractured, punctuated by expulsions and incomplete degrees from prestigious universities and institutions in the UK and the US. These weren't mere academic setbacks, they were early indicators of deeper malice, perhaps an inability to conform, a volatile temperament struggling to be contained. Reports from his time abroad described as increasingly erratic and aggressive demeanor, behavior that was often dismissed or quietly managed with the resources his family's wealth provided. He cultivated an image of an artist, a creative soul, particularly in the realm of therapy and counseling, even establishing a therapy center in Islamabad. This for many years was the ultimate facade, a man seemingly dedicated to mental well-being, yet whose own mental state was at best deeply troubled, at worst dangerously unstable. Friends and acquaintances described duality, at times charming, charismatic, even intelligent, and at others erratic, aggressive, and prone to outbursts. There were rumors of substance abuse, of unpredictable behavior, of a darkness lurking beneath his polished facade. He was a serpent, coiling, observing, his true nature hidden within the leaves of his privileged existence. The opulence that surrounded him, the hushed corridors of his family's mansion, the exclusive clubs he frequented, the bespoke suits he wore, acted as a shield, a social blanket that made it difficult for outsiders to see the simmering rage and entitlement that lay beneath. His parents, accustomed to solving problems with a phone call and a checkbook, had perhaps unintentionally created an environment where accountability was a foreign concept altogether. He lived in a bubble where the consequences of his actions could always be managed or outsourced to a staff member or a family lawyer. The paths of Noor and Zahir, both products of similar social strata, were destined to cross. In Pakistan's elite circles, acquaintances are almost inevitable, woven through school networks, family connections, and social gatherings. Their relationship initially was likely casual, a common thread in the social mix of their youth. Perhaps they met at a mutual friend's birthday party, a sprawling garden party in the crisp Islamabad air, or through shared interests in the arts. What began as an acquaintance Then a friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. For Noor, Zahir might have been someone who's very exciting, perhaps even a challenge. His artistic pretensions, his global background, his family's prominence, these could have been attractive qualities. Like many young women, Noor, with her empathetic nature, might have seen the potential for good, perhaps even the need for healing, and for her to be the healer in Zahir. The red flags, if any, might have been subtle at first, easily dismissed as quirks of an artistic temperament or challenges common in young love. In many South Asian communities, relationships, especially romantic ones, often carry layers of unspoken expectations and subtle power dynamics. Parental approval, family reputation, and the potential for marriage are often underlying considerations, even in modern, liberal households. While Noor and Zahir's relationship was likely not a formally arranged one, the pressure to conform, to make suitable choices, can still subtly influence young individuals. Oftentimes, disagreements or problematic behaviors might be quietly managed, perhaps out of a desire to maintain harmony or protect the relationship from external judgment. However, as time wore on, the initial charm likely began to chip away, revealing the darker impulses beneath. Friends and family later recounted instances of Zahir's possessiveness, his erratic mood swings, his attempts to control Noor's movements and friendships. These were the subtle tremors before the earthquake, the faint scent of smoke before the boom. The relationship, once perhaps a source of joy, slowly transformed into a cage, its bars becoming increasingly apparent and strong. Noor, with her vibrant spirit, found herself entangled in a web of emotional manipulation, where every choice she made was scrutinized. Every friendship a potential threat to Zahir's absolute control. She was not just a girlfriend. He treated her like a possession, a prize to be kept and guarded and controlled. By mid 2021, the relationship had soured significantly. Noor, recognizing the toxicity and the growing danger, made the courageous decision to break free. She sought solace, perhaps dreaming of reclaiming her vibrant life, her travel plans, her artistic pursuits. But Zahir, like a true predator, refused to let go. His possessiveness escalated into obsession, his pleas turning into threats. The events leading up to the fateful day in July are a chilling testament to the dangerous nature of stalking and control. On July 19, 2021, Noor visited Zahir's house in Sector F74, a high-security upscale neighborhood in Islamabad. The exact reasons for her visit remain shrouded in the fog of the crime itself. Was it a final attempt to retrieve belongings, a desperate conversation to seek closure, or was it a manipulation, a lure from Zahir playing on her empathy, on a residual sense of obligation? What followed was a horrifying ordeal, spanning almost 2 days. Noor was held captive. Her pleas for freedom met with defiance and increasing violence. Attempts to escape were thwarted. Her phone confiscated, her last lines of communication severed. This wasn't a spontaneous act of rage. It was a sustained, calculated torment, unfolding within the confines of a very privileged home, shielded from the outside by high walls and the unspoken code of the elite. The details that emerged later paint a picture of immense terror, physical assault, psychological torture, a desperate struggle for survival. She reportedly jumped from a first-floor window in a desperate bid for freedom, only to be dragged back inside by Zahir and a household staff member. This horrifying incident, witnessed by others, became a crucial piece of the prosecution's puzzle. The silence of the house staff during these agonizing hours speaks volumes about the power dynamics at play. Fear, loyalty, perhaps even Complicity. For those interested in what exactly happened and the timeline of the events surrounding Noor Mukadam's, here's what happened. Based on the court proceedings and detailed reports of the investigation, the night before the on July 18, 2021, Zahir Jaffer was preparing to travel to New York and had arranged for a taxi to take him to the airport. At that time, Noor was at her home in Islamabad. He called her and she left her house around 9:05 p.m., arriving at Jaffer's residence around 10 p.m. The taxi ride and Captivity the next morning on July 19 at approximately 2:15 a.m., security footage and witness testimony revealed that Zahir and a barefooted Noor got into a taxi. They were on their way to the airport, but Zahir abruptly told the driver to turn back, stating they were too late. The driver returned them to Jaffer's house at 2:35 a.m. Throughout the short trip, Noor was silent while Zahir spoke to her. The reason for her initial visit to his house and the taxi ride remains unclear. But according to later reports, she was held captive there for nearly 2 days. The attempted escape and during her time held captive, Noor made a desperate attempt to escape. She jumped from a first-floor balcony and ran towards the main gate. However, she was chased by Zahir and a household staff member who handed her back over to him. This tragic incident was the one that we spoke about earlier and was caught on camera, was a key piece of evidence in the trial. On July 20th, the nightmare reached its absolute peak. Noor's father sent her text messages asking for her location, but she did not respond. The investigation later pieced together that Noor was subjected to a prolonged period of torture, physical assault, and psychological torment. She was brutally and beheaded in a horrifying act of violence. It was Jaffer's chilling confession to his parents that eventually led to authorities being alerted. As for why the domestic staff did not reach out to the police, the livelihoods and safety of the domestic staff is dependent on their wealthy employers. To defy them would mean not just losing a job but potentially facing far worse consequences. This culture of quiet obedience, born from a deeply ingrained feudal mindset, created a perfect storm for a tragedy of this magnitude to unfold behind closed doors. Because had the domestic staff not complied or denied Zahir the help that he was seeking, Noor could have been alive today. July 20th, 2021. The morning dawned, oblivious to the horror it would unleash. Inside Zahir Jaffer's sprawling F74 residence, the nightmare reached its horrific crescendo. The sequence of events pieced together by meticulous investigation and later presented in court is almost unimaginable. Noor, in her desperate struggle for life, was reportedly attacked with a sharp object before being subjected to the ultimate act of violence. She was brutally decapitated, her life extinguished in a horrifying act of brutality. The house, once a symbol of opulence, became a house known for a killing. It was Zahir's chilling call to his parents confessing to the that set in motion the chain of events that would eventually bring his horror to light. His parents, instead of immediately alerting the authorities, took a reprehensible step. They allegedly dispatched their domestic staff to the house to handle the situation. This decision, born from a desperate attempt to protect their son and their family's reputation, became a crucial element in the legal battle, leading to the charges of abetment. The concept of Izzat, honor, reputation, is incredibly powerful in South Asian societies, particularly among influential families. The lens to which families might go to protect their Izzat, honor, reputation, even when faced with grave accusations against a family member, can sometimes supersede ethical or legal obligations. This often leads to attempts at cover-ups, manipulation of evidence, or exerting influence to evade the justice. It was not Zahir's family who called the police, but rather the heroic actions of the therapy center employees where Zahir sometimes worked, who, upon learning of the incident from his parents' staff, finally alerted the authorities. This delayed response, the initial attempts at containment, only served to deepen the horror and the subsequent public outrage. When the police finally arrived at the scene, they were met with a sight of absolute horror. The once immaculate residence now bore the gruesome marks of a violent struggle. This was where the painstaking work of the investigations began, a methodical quest to unearth the truth from the rubble of a horrific crime. The forensic teams were meticulous, each piece of evidence a silent scream of the victim's final moments. They collected samples, documented the scene, and began piecing together the events of those horrifying, terrifying 2 days. The most damning evidence, however, was already speaking volumes: the CCTV footage from Zahir's own house. This footage, recovered from a hard drive his family allegedly tried to conceal, was the silent, unblinking witness to Noor's last moments. It showed her desperate attempts to escape, her frantic efforts to climb out of a window only to be caught and violently dragged back inside. It captured the horrifying sequences of events with an unflinching clarity that made Zahir's claims of innocence and mental instability almost impossible to believe. The prosecution would later use this footage as the cornerstone of their case, a piece of evidence that the defense could never fully refute. Call records traced Zahir's chilling confession to his parents and their subsequent calculated response. This evidence painted a clear picture of a family allegedly attempting to manipulate the situation and evade justice, not just a son acting alone. It was a cold, hard look at the darker side of privilege and how it can, for some, become a shield against even the law. The trial that followed became a national spectacle, a courtroom drama that held a mirror up to Pakistan's soul. The media, the public, and countless activists watched with bated breath, hoping for a verdict that would defy the country's long history of powerful individuals escaping accountability. Zahir Jaffer's courtroom appearances were nothing short of a bizarre performance. He would laugh inappropriately, make strange gestures, and disrupt proceedings, often claiming to be mentally unfit for trial. His defense team's strategy hinged on this very narrative of insanity. But the prosecution, led by a determined team, methodically dismantled this facade, presenting a mountain of evidence that pointed to a premeditated and calculated crime, not a spontaneous act of a deranged mind. Witness testimonies were a crucial part of this. The household staff, who had previously been complicit out of fear, bravely recounted the horrific events of those 2 days, detailing how Noor was held captive and how they were ordered to keep silent and later to dispose of evidence. Their words were raw, emotional, and gave the court a rare glimpse into the hidden power dynamics of an elite household. The prosecution argued that this was not a crime of passion, but a deliberate act of a man who believed himself to be above the law, a man whose sense of entitlement was so vast that he felt he could take a life and his family would ensure the evidence could be gotten rid of and he would walk away a free man. After months and months of legal battles, numerous hearings, and overwhelming public anticipation, the verdict was finally delivered on February 24th, 2022. The trial court in Islamabad found Zahir Jaffer guilty of the murder of Noor Mukadam and sentenced him to death. This verdict was a monumental moment for Pakistan. It was seen as a rare victory for justice in a country where high-profile cases involving the privileged often result in acquittals or light sentences. The court also imposed a fine and ordered Zahir to pay compensation to Noor's family. Zahir's parents, Zahir Jaffer and Ismat Adamji, were acquitted of the charges of abetment. However, the two employees, Muhammad Iftikhar, the security guard, and Muhammad Jan, the gardener, were sentenced to 10 years in prison for aiding Zahir in keeping Noor captive and concealing the crime. This mixed verdict, while bringing some closure, also left many questions regarding the accountability of those who enabled such heinous crimes and acts. The Noor Mukadam case will forever be etched in the collective memory of Pakistan. It sparked vital conversations about gender-based violence, highlighting the alarming prevalence of violence against women, even in supposedly secure and affluent environments. It challenged the notion that wealth and influence can always shield individuals from justice. The case became a test for Pakistan's justice system, demonstrating the power of public pressure and diligent investigation. Noor Mukadam, the vibrant artist, the loving daughter, the friend with an infectious laugh, is gone. But her tragic death ignited a movement, a demand for accountability that resonated far beyond the walls of that Islamabad residence. She became a symbol, a catalyst for change, a touching reminder that justice, though often slow and arduous, can sometimes prevail. Her story, though heart-wrenching, serves as a beacon for awareness, a call to protect the vulnerable, and a plea for a world where no light is ever extinguished by alone a serpent's embrace. Her story is no longer just her story alone. It's a chapter in Pakistan's ongoing struggle for justice and equality. Thank you for joining us on Welted Marigold. Until the next episode, stay kind, stay safe.